Hello, welcome to another episode of the Horror Vision Horror Podcast. My name is Sean,
I'm John.
And I'm Ray.
and it is February 5th as we're recording this. We've been wanting to do this episode for a while, but thus is life. Balancing schedules is definitely not easy. Uh, this is a tribute episode or a discussion, whatever you want to call it, um, to David Lynch, who passed away on the 15th of January. And oh man, yeah, it's not easy to talk about.
No, it's not. It's not easy. I mean, I
Yeah,
think I'm
this is a
better
rough
about
one.
it now, but I remember the day it happened, I almost broke down in tears. Like he's he was a special artist, like singular in vision, and I don't know of anyone else that I can say is like him. So it's a big loss to the
Yeah,
community, to art, to film, to storytelling in general.
This was a rough one for me, in for many reasons, but I think it was like it was one of those things where it's like I was expecting it to happen, just not that quickly, and I it kind of came amidst so much chaotic stuff and just horrible shit that was going on that
Been a rough year so far.
yeah, it's like
yeah.
you
One
get
month in, well, we're really 2 weeks in,
Fuck.
and you could say that, right?
exactly, yeah, you got like fires in California, Trump and President Musk taking over the country and causing wreaking havoc.
Hey,
uh
hey, what do we need a Department of Education for? God damn it, waste of time.
and then in the midst of all of that, Lynch leaves us. One, lucky him for from a certain point of view, and
Yeah, yeah, true.
and second, this is it sucks because it's like this is somebody who has always, um, ironically, somebody who's had a reputation for making films that are not always the most legible and most scrutable, on the first viewing. Uh, his films helped me make sense of life in
Yeah,
many
well
ways.
said.
You just wouldn't think that from like watching something like Inland Empire, but I assure you it's true.
Yeah, I agree. You know, he is the so first of all, John. I listened to your this movie saved my life. You and Miles Fortune have that podcast. I listened to your episode, the L.A. fires and David Lynch, and
Yeah.
just really great episode. I everybody should just go check out this movie saved my life podcast. It's fucking awesome. It always is.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that too. Like I did a deep dive one night on John's podcast and it's excellent. Like don't sleep on that. It changes. I've convinced I'm going to check out Megalopolis at some point. I was against it, and then I heard a John's
No,
podcast and I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. So
no, fuck that. Watch Surviving Edged Weapons instead.
like I still need to.
Yeah, but you know, I discovered David Lynch the night that the Twin Peaks pilot aired on ABC in 1990. It was a
Wow.
Sunday night movie, and I sat down on the couch. I think it was already somewhat in progress, maybe a couple minutes in. Had no idea what it was. My dad was watching it. We just kind of both sat there and watched it through to the end, and I was taken very much. There is that element of Twin Peaks, especially in I mean the whole thing, but in season one especially, that the ominous lonely night. And it deeply affected me, and I ended up watching the whole series, and it just changed my DNA. I mean, I was a 14-year-old metalhead, and that opened me up to jazz. It opened me up to avant-garde cinema. It just opened me up to so many things. So he is the most important artist in my life and always will be. But also, I feel like I really thought a lot about this. When Bowie died, I thought about why is this death affecting me so much? And I realized with Bowie, it was nobody knows really how to get through life. And when you get to a certain age, you realize your parents don't really know either, right? It's like you just kind of fake it till you make it, and you go along. And Bowie was somebody that I saw age, and I felt like he aged very well, not just physically, but just in general as a person, as an artist. So he was kind of a model for that, and it was hard to lose that. And with David Lynch, I've really thought about what it is, and I think I've distilled it down to this. That Twin Peaks, I consider he's got an early, a mid, and a late period, right? And
Mhm.
the mid period kind of ends right before Lost Highway because although Straight Story is kind of a callback to it, but he is very much a product of the 50s. He's talked about it in interviews and small town America, you know, his at one point his resume had the words Eagle Scout, Missoula, Montana on it. And I feel like that really says something about this guy that was in Hollywood at the time, you know, in the early 80s trying to get somewhere to put that out there. But his mid-period work is it's not only the largest artistic, social, and spiritual influence on my life, but he was a bridge for me, right? I came of age, as we all did, on this precipice, but in a world that's pre-globalization, that we now live in post-globalization. So he was a link back to that. He was a way I could touch the 50s, which the 50s very much influenced my upbringing in the 80s. And I just feel like it was a link to a better world. I understand the bullshit some people can call like you are a 6'1", straight white male. Fuck you. It wasn't great for everybody. I understand that 100%. It was shit for a lot of people. The world is, but there, even at its worst, I feel like it was maybe a kinder world than it is now. And I just feel like with losing him, the bridge is gone. And now I feel hopelessly adrift in this post globalization dystopian nightmare. And I'm just like, it was just really difficult to lose that. I mean, the link to that older version of society, it's an unfathomable horizon now. It's gone. Right? It's like Hunter Thompson describing if you look with the right eyes, you can almost see where the high watermark broke and rolled back.
The
Same thing.
wave, yeah, the
Yeah.
wave speech. I get it. I mean, it's funny that you say that because for me, I get what you're saying, but for me, I feel like Lynch, his work prepares me for that because I feel like, especially when you look at like Twin Peaks or like Blue Velvet, like the father falling over, mowing the lawn, and then the ear, and then getting deeper into the soil. Like, I feel like a lot of his work is that the very like picturesque, like idyllic scene always hides a sinister nature and a truer nature that is darker. Like the whole thing of Twin Peaks is that these people in this town that should be kind of like folksy and charming are actually living like these parallel lives of like darkness and inspiration and like everyone, I mean everyone, like the I forget Ed's wife who's obsessed with the drapery but has this like weird like sinister anger to her and almost like a super strength when it gets tapped in. And Ed is not the devoted husband. He's sleeping with the diner lady. And
Right.
like there's just all these little elements that like feel like as much as he was in tune with this world that was simpler and nicer, that he still understood that it was dark still and people were
Yes.
hiding deep secrets. My connection to Lynch comes in two waves, which is bizarre to say, but the first thing I remember knowing and seeing and having watched several times was Dune as a child. My mother was a big devoted fan of the book. Um, I saw the film, I had the action figures and toys like when I was a kid. Um, and so that was my first Lynch. And then it comes as like a second wave because the second Lynch that I experienced as a teenager was Lost Highway. And it hit me that like, oh, Dune is kind of a anomaly in his career. And it's not his typical. And then when I saw Lost Highway, I went, oh my God. I First of all, the first time I saw it, I walked out of the theater, I looked at my buddy and I said, I'm gonna have to think about this one for a few days. And I think I spent 5 days just thinking about that movie and what it meant and what happened. And then I just started seeking out more of his work. And then I saw that, oh, okay, more is typical of that, where it's which is not it's weird to say that there's anything typical for his work. It's dark and beautiful and dreamlike, and yeah, it's kind of hard to pin down, but I mean, you see when you see his work, you know it. Um,
Hmm.
and like I said before, like I think I'd say the same goes for Bowie. Like part of the reason that it is such a hard loss is he's so singular in vision. Like even when he's just doing straight dramas like Elephant Man or a Straight Story, like there's still his touch there.
Hmm.
Like you can sense it, you can feel it. Like you're sitting in those scenes, and like when he's, for example, when when the call comes and the daughter gets up to get the call. First of all, they're sitting there in that chair, those chairs for a while, just looking at the rain come down. And you can it's weird. I felt a sense of dread in the phone call for some reason. But then she gets up and gets the phone call, and the scene is all just him sitting in that chair and like him sensing something's wrong.
Hmm.
And you see it in his face, and the actor who did it was fantastic. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I know he was an old Hollywood actor. He'd been stuntman, but you see like he senses something has happened. Um,
Farnsworth.
Richard Farnsworth, and he just does an excellent job of it. But the hold on that, the hold on that, the slight orchestration in the background, that feels so Lynch. Like he doesn't pull the camera away and like make us more comfortable. He doesn't do quick cuts and things like that. When he does, it's for a purpose. And
Hmm.
there's a style that he has, like when they're looking up at the night sky, like it feels like a Lynch movie still.
Hmm.
It's a sedate Lynch movie. It's a little bit more controlled, but it's still a Lynch movie.
It's still the movie he wanted to make.
Yeah, it still feels more of a Lynch movie than Dune does, quite honestly. Um, but I mean that singular vision, that style, like it's something that can't be repeated. Like I don't like we can get people that are close to it and people that like you go, okay, I can see how this is similar. But no one's gonna replicate that. Like
Yeah, and we don't
it's
want anybody to. You know what I mean?
no,
That's
no,
the big.
I don't.
Yeah,
But
I
I
know.
don't. I think that's why it's harder to take. It's easier to take. Like I don't want to slam anybody, but like if some action director passes away tomorrow, they'll find somebody else to blow up cars or helicopters or whatever else.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
you can't find somebody and go, "Hey, go make a David Lynch movie for me
Right.
that feels like a Lynch movie." They're gonna be like, you need to go get a spirit medium or something
Yep.
then, because I'm not making that movie. I can't make you a David Lynch movie. There ain't no way I can make you a David Lynch movie. I'll get close. So I feel it's the same thing.
Yeah. Well said. John, talk about your relationship with David Lynch.
So I'm a little bit younger than you, not terribly much so, but just a little bit. So um, there were a few things that were a little later, but there are definitely some overlap. If I had to guess what my first encounter with Lynch was, it was probably Dune or The Elephant Man. But I think my first real encounter with Lynch, the first instance where I was cognizant that I was sitting down and watching a film directed by someone that so many people revere was Blue Velvet. And this was a and I knew
I'm envious of that.
it's such a it was an amazing experience, and people had built it up in my mind. Oh, it's so shocking, it's like it's disturbing, and there were parts of it that were, but it was um it was a film that when I was watching it, I knew that I was watching something by somebody who had something to say, and it wasn't a simplistic political reading. Like I one could definitely say the metaphor for the sinisterness that lurks beneath the surface was a metaphor for Reagan's America, but I thought it was definitely much more than that, and
Yeah, it's more. I agree.
something that lasted beyond the boundaries of the era that it was made, and from that then I was hooked, and I agree with what you say about um, mid-career Lynch. I think mid-career Lynch has always been my favorite. I would probably, to me, I for me, I would start that with with Blue Velvet,
Yeah, agreed.
and uh,
Absolutely.
you place the end of it with Lost Highway. I would say I would place the end of it with Mulholland Drive. I would say Mulholland Drive is his mic drop on his mid-career.
I
Uh,
can agree with
and
that.
um, and I also have an interesting relation with Twin Peaks as well, because Twin Peaks I came to a little later. People talked about it. I came to it a few years later, and it was someone that I know had taped all episodes and watching binging it, before binging was an actual thing,
Hmm.
one summer. And my parents are both from Washington State. They both grew up in Washington State, and there's a little town about 2 hours north and to the east of Seattle called Index, and it's just past this town called Monroe. You take the two freeway east, and then you're heading towards Spokane and up through the mountains and all that.
Hmm.
And Index, I swear, is that is Twin Peaks as far as I'm concerned. It looks like it. It feels like it. It would definitely be where, Laura Palmer went missing, and it was for me. It just sort of like it was almost kind of, and it always felt like such a haunted site. And Twin Peaks felt like it was made somebody who got that, and it felt like it was made by somebody who got that thought process for me, and so that was really what drew me into it. And just as a side note, and I'll just pause here for a second, it's very interesting because about an hour before I found out that David Lynch had passed away, um, I was actually thinking of Bowie and thinking about how I miss Bowie, and because we lost him in January as well, like
Yeah,
about 9 years ago. And
yeah. It was just the ninth anniversary.
yeah, and life like Bowie, Lynch made films that were very um, had that strange factor, had the weird factorness to them, um, which is enduring to somebody who, grew up in LA but spent significant portions of their life in Seattle and Portland, Oregon, and during the early 90s. And also it was there was a maturity to his work as things went along that never sacrificed, the sort of sense of playfulness. It's like I always like one of the best interviews that I ever heard David Lynch, where he discussed his process, was one time where he talks about how he took a roast chicken apart with his son, and they made kind of sculpture art with it. And just sort of like talked about like all the individual pieces, and so one of those things where like, you think like, oh, that's something like something a weirdo would do. It's like, no, no, I could think of 10 other directors that, like are legitimately weird in that regard, and just and looking at that and thinking of other interviews and talking about how his thought process and how he said, it comes to you like images in your mind, like images on a TV. And it's always just one bit at a time. It's never all at once. And that's something that I've carried with me, into my own creative work and my own writings and teaching and just everything that I do.
Wow, well said. He definitely, this is still like a really emotional. I've been working through, I finished a rewatch I had started months ago. As soon as he died, I finished a rewatch of the original Twin Peaks, and then I went right into the return, and which was abrupt. I'd never done that before. I'd never gone from one directly into the other. And I actually wouldn't recommend it for most people because that's definitely where you get the idea that this is late period as opposed to mid. And I could totally understand what you're saying about bringing that mid period mic drop up at Mulholland. The reason I separate Lost Highway, starting at Lost Highway with the straight story as a callback, is because he becomes more enamored with LA and neo noir, and there's no more Lumberton, there's no more 1950s America. And Twin Peaks is very much not, the return is just, it's just not concerned with being Twin Peaks at all. And I'll put in some show notes. I've recently found some really interesting articles. One of them I had read before after it aired or whatever, but I just kind of been sifting through stuff, and also just to, you know, I agree, like he's not saying that, like, call back to the pre-globalization. It's not that bridge to a nicer world. I think let me qualify that a little bit in that there's always that evil. That's what his work is about, right? Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet, the best example of, like, and like Ray said, the shot in Blue Velvet where you go into the dirt, right? What lies underneath the facade of the nice American suburban town. That was also my experience with that world, because in the early 90s, it's like we're still kind of in that world, pre-internet, pre-total globalization. And I was in a suburb, so it's surrounded by forest preserve. I mean, we hung out in the forest preserves. And one of my friends, I mean, I didn't know this at the time, it came out later, but a guy that was like in my circle of friends murdered a girl that was 2 years younger than us in the woods at night. And I mean, that's the worst, but there's so many other things that I came out of my high school experience realizing Lynch is right. What looks like a happy facade is just covering up a fucking rotting underbelly, right? And so I've always carried that with me. The difference now in globalization, there used to be threats that were like localized threats. Now all the threats, it's all global. And I it's daunting to deal with a local threat, but it almost inspires madness to contemplate on a daily basis all of the fucking global it's almost like if somebody walked up and stabbed me in the stomach, I'd be like, cool, I don't have to worry about all this other shit anymore. Like, you know, and I think his later work, like Inland Empire and the Return especially, is totally about that. What world are we in? That's not that's a bastardization of the last line of The Return, which is like, what year is it or whatever. But it's similar, and he just was so fucking prescient. It's mind boggling, and like John said, he's often like inscrutable. People consider his work inscrutable, but it just it just requires think of the fucking commitment an artist like, okay, John, you just referenced it in interviews, you paraphrase. I know the quote. I don't know the exact quote, but I recognize it when you paraphrase it. Like, it arrives in your mind like images on a screen.
Yeah, the
Think of
The Paul Holden Grabber interview.
think of the fucking trust you have to have in yourself to fucking make a movie based on that. Like most people write a script, right? And then like they work out the script and I think Lost Highway, I think he famously said started with this image he had of the Dick Laurent is dead. And look like it's he's a fearless iconoclastic artist, and it's not even that they do exist, but it's so hard for them to break through because the globalization, like nobody's ever going to give him nobody's going to give somebody like David Lynch the money to do the shit that he did, right? I mean, I'm not, that's a little bit dramatic, that's not entirely true, but certainly not. I don't know, sorry.
Well, I think to one of the things his films recognize, and you do as well, when you're talking about like a road to a better world. I would agree that the past was better in that it was much more of an active existence rather than a
Yeah,
passive existence. And I think like a lot of his films touch on that. And
yeah,
people and also people were more curious back then, than they are now. It's just the irony is that we have the greater tools with which to satisfy that curiosity than any other point in history.
yeah. But it's been ruined. It's been
Yeah.
ruined by corporate shit.
The internet used to be a nice place to live. Now it's a shitty neighborhood.
Yeah, it really is. And like and people were more curious pre-internet uh saturation, because if you wanted to know something, you kind of still had to go out and do it or see it. But now you can just live like, oh, think of anything and look it up on YouTube and you can see it. So why would, well, why the fuck would I go to a concert when I could just see that band play on YouTube? And the answer to us would be, what? No, it's not going to be the same thing. But two generations down the road where they don't have somebody saying that, they're not. People aren't going to know. They're going to be like, oh yeah, I could just watch them play that live. Well, but it's not the same thing. But that bridge is gone, and I just feel like he was maybe not the last, but the last big link for me. I don't know. Ray, am I crazy? Is it time for me to just cut off an ear and eat it? My ear, not yours or anyone else's.
No, just cut it off and leave it in a field.
Okay, I could do that. I know a guy.
No, I don't think so. But it's funny because my reaction is that like I feel like it's a world he prepares me for.
Yeah,
And he's always prepared me for. Like, I feel like kind of the point for me of his work has always been like that everything has everything has duality. Like, there's that, you go back to Blue Velvet and like there is the scene, there is like everything sinister that happens and like this idyllic life that Jeffrey lives. And like, I mean, look at the ending with the bird sitting on the on the windowsill and is, chirping beautifully. But I feel like he kind of understands that like you may have a good existence and life may be grand, but maybe you're just missing what's out there. Because once Jeffrey gets exposed to the darkness that's out there, it changes him and he knows it's out there. Like he can't ever escape knowing that it's
yeah,
there. Like and the characters in Twin Peaks are they're living this charmed existence and then Laura dies and then suddenly they're having to confront their own darkness. They're having to confront things that they haven't dealt with. I mean, even I can't remember the name of the best friend and the guy that she was secretly dating, but even they have to confront the fact that they have been attracted to each other this whole time.
how can you
And
not remember James,
that's right,
and
James.
Donna?
Donna,
Sorry,
James and Donna.
James.
Because it's been like 10 years since I watched it with you. That's why.
I
But
know. I'm kidding.
but I mean, that this is this is something that they've been hiding, and now that they have to, now that like they're that bridge between them, or the buffer, or whatever you want to call it, the reason that they haven't followed those feelings is gone. They have to now confront them and go, oh geez, this is something we have to deal with. um so I think that he always understood that, like, there's I just watched this straight story in preparation for this episode because I felt like it was the one thing of his that I still hadn't seen in some form or digested. And it's this beautiful, simple movie. But then
Yeah.
there's that scene, and the scene that struck me was so much was the scene where when he's coming down the hill and he damages the tractor and he gets stuck at that house with those people for a couple of
Yeah.
days. And he goes with the old man to have a beer. And they talk about their memories from World War II. And you get a real sense from that scene of what these men have been through and what they've seen. And they're just trying to live their lives and continue living their lives in the most wholesome, simple fashion they can. And they've confronted darkness before, and it's left them. And they can't ever abandon it. Like he admits that he had a drinking problem for a while because of it, that he came home with a head full of bad memories.
Yeah.
And this poor older guy next to him also has those bad memories, but they're just trying to continue living their existence. Um,
That's a great scene.
so to me, it feels like he's always known those things. And that, and like, man, I'm so curious to know if he knew about the emphysema while he was filming that movie, because there's something so interesting. I don't know if you want to call it prophetic, but about that scene where uh, he goes to the doctor, and
Oh
the
yeah.
doctor tells him, like, you have to stop smoking, you've got emphysema, you've got this, you got that. And he's like, no tests, no blood tests, not gonna do that, no x-rays. And then literally the first thing he does when he gets home is he strikes up a cigarette. He opens, not a cigarette, a cigar. He starts smoking a cigar. Like, yeah, well, too late to change that now. Like, I wonder if, like, that was Lynch, like, literally commenting on himself. Like, yeah, I know smoke's gonna kill me, but it's what I do. It's what I'm gonna do. Sorry, it's just the way it is now.
When he announced emphysema whenever that was, it was, I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago, I think. He said some like, I have enjoyed smoking. I enjoy, he
Yes.
describes it very, very lusciously. And I used to smoke. I did, for a number of years in the 90s. And I know exactly what he was saying. And he's like, but, I mean, this is the price that I pay.
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
mean, the guy did love to smoke. Like, I don't
he
know.
did. And I've always thought there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you want to
No, it's
smoke,
fine.
smoke.
Yeah.
And like, I used to tell a dear friend of mine who's an older woman I used to tend bar with, I used to tell her, I always quote Jimi Hendrix. It's my life. I'm the one that's got to die when it's my time to die. So let me live my life the way I want to. So,
Yeah.
I used to say, I smoke and don't apologize for it. But when you have to pay at the end, don't be like, oh, woe is me or whatever. Just, own it. And and
Yeah.
that's what he did 100,
Oh yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he does own it. I don't think he ever like backtracked and was like, "Oh
No,
no,
he
don't do
didn't.
it." Like,
No,
he
he
was like,
didn't.
"No, I did this to myself. This is me."
Yeah.
Like, I
It was a trade
it's
off and it
funny,
was worth it to him.
you know, uh I think it's a funny that's one of my favorite anecdotes about Lynch, is that, like, I missed the opportunity to go to it, but years ago, I think back in like 99, maybe 98, Lockman did a retrospective of his work. And one of the nights they did was they showed Lost Highway, which was his most recent film at the time.
Hmm.
And then they did a talk after. And the talk later got recorded. It was recorded and later it was shown on IFC, so you could see it and check it out. And he's sitting in this theater that is connected to LACMA. It's a fucking museum, and he's sitting there, and they start the interview, and before the interviewer can really get the ball rolling, like, they introduce him, he's talking, and he's like, can I smoke? And the guy's like, yeah, if you want to. And he's like, thank you. For anyway, pulls out a cigarette, starts smoking. And he's in the middle of this theater's museum and he's smoking. And I was always like, that is a man who does what he wants, and I kind of appreciate him for it. Even though I would have been in the theater like, oh no, he's smoking, it's gonna get me. But hey, it's he kind of lived a life a little unapologetically. He made films the way he wanted to, and
And he asked.
Yeah.
and I think, yeah, that's true. That's true. But but like it kind of, but like he did things the way he wanted to, and like if he could get away with it, he got away with it, and I kind
Yeah.
of appreciate that. Like, another thing that like comes to mind is they I think it was Joe Bob posted this on the day that he passed away, and it was this he showed one of his films on I think Monster Vision years ago, and he said that the way that he got the film The Elephant Man was they had people they were talking about, directors, and then someone told him and then the people got in contact with him, and they were like, yeah, we're gonna show why am I blanking on his name? Oh my goodness, who's the producer on Elephant Man again? Mel Brooks. So they were like, we're gonna screen Eraserhead for Mel Brooks. And so he started in the theater watching the film with them, and then he got up and he started pacing the lobby. And he's like, "Oh man, I'm not gonna get this. This is done. Like I'm not gonna get this movie." And story goes, the movie ends, the doors fly open. Brooks runs into the lobby and he goes, "This is madness. You're hired." And like just fucking love the movie. So, being that singular vision, being the guy who was like, I'm just gonna make what I want and put it on film and get it out there, like got him that movie. Like
Yeah.
Brooks liked it. And like, so, if you're out there and you're like thinking like this is too strange, this is not gonna connect, why would anyone give me money to make more movies? Like, take a chance. Because art, when people see art, they know it and they like it. And like sometimes the first time heard when I first heard that Mel Brooks was the producer on Elephant Man and was like, I need, Lynch will work. I thought, really? Mel Brooks, the comedy guy? Like, but you know, that's because it's his medium. Doesn't mean he doesn't appreciate other
Yeah.
mediums. Doesn't mean that somebody isn't going to see your stuff and go, I appreciate the fuck out of this, and someone needs to make more movies with this person or
Yeah.
produce more art. Like, and it's being that brave to make what you want that got him that job. So
Yeah. Definitely. Well said.
Yeah, I know somebody in Seattle who's a curator and curate did a lot of work with David Lynch, and he let David Lynch smoke in the Seattle Cinerama when you're like they have like a very strict no smoking policy. It's like we'll let him smoke.
That's awesome. Being from, well, so having roots in Washington State, and I
Mm.
like the fact that you said the Index felt haunted, and like when you saw Twin Peaks, you were like, okay, this feels authentic, right? Talk about, I don't know, what is your perception of the way that David Lynch kind of balances this neo-noir LA modernity, because both Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive and also to a degree Inland Empire really are rooted in modern elements, aesthetics. Talk about the balance between the kind of the old world, or old world sounds stupid, but you know what I'm saying, like this small town Index, right? Which Missoula, Montana, you could do
Mhm.
like a 1-for-1 ratio, right, where he was from.
That's what I always thought. I always thought that, it's like he's drawing a lot of like it almost kind of felt like Twin Peaks was just sort of very personal to him. And maybe not so much the return, but the original Twin Peaks I thought was just a real personal work, based on his experience growing up rural and yet at the same time, uh, being part of like really enamored, with the LA sunshine and just sort of like the details, but the way that colors pop out, especially reds in the mist that comes out in the morning time. Um, and really this like very frightening feeling that one gets, when everyone knows each other. It's like you feel like it's like, in a place where you feel like you shouldn't be a stranger, you are like almost more so than you are in the city. I think he just dialed into that, and that part in the phrase, but might have been the linchpin that holds together films like well, Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
I wanted to ask you guys both about your thoughts on Wild at Heart because I was thinking about Lynch films that I wanted to revisit in the wake of him passing away, and I said like if there was a way for me to go, if there was one film that was on my wish list to go see, like on the big screen, as part of the retrospectives,
Mm.
it would be Mulholland Drive. But there were a couple Mulholland Drive screenings around, but just the timing just did not work for
Hmm.
me. I just couldn't make it happen. Um, so I'm going to be seeing not next week, but the week after. I'm seeing Blue Velvet on big screen. I'm looking forward to that. I've seen Mulholland Drive at the Cinerama on 35 millimeter, so it's like I'm totally fine with that being my lasting impression of
Hmm.
that film. I think that's a pretty decent way to do it. Uh, but one film I've been having an itch to rewatch lately, and I probably might do that this weekend, is Wild at Heart. I wanted to know your thoughts on Wild at Heart. And an additional question, this is a who would win in a fight question.
I know
Uh,
this question because you asked it to Miles, and I was prepared to bring this up if you didn't.
Oh, me
yeah,
too.
there we go. Who would win in a fight? Frank Booth versus Bobby Peru. This is I have a whole bag full of these questions. Like for fans of LA neo noir. I ask who would win in a fight? Alonzo Harris from Training Day versus Vincent Hanna from Heat. I just
Ooh,
like have a
ooh.
whole I just have a whole bunch of these. But yeah, for now,
Oh,
yeah,
wow, that's a good one.
Bobby Peru versus Frank Booth.
Frank Booth, in my opinion, like I Bobby Peru is a lot of bravado, like to the point where when he goes in and like he's just with Laura Dern and he goes and takes a leak and leaves the door open, you hear him piss. He's like, you hear a deep sound coming down from Bobby. Like he's even bragging about his urinating, right? That's a guy that's just so facade. Frank Booth, there's no facade. He will just fucking kill you. Like done. He's not going to talk about it. He's not going to try to impress you. Just next.
Ray?
Ray, what do you
Oh,
think?
I can't disagree with that. I mean, just to add to that argument, like, oh well, Peru shoots himself kind of by accident. Um, but Booth, man, there's scenes that just stuck with me forever. One of them is the like the lipstick scene.
Oh God, yes.
God damn it, that's so unnerving. It just beat my ass. Why are you gonna? Oh Jesus! Oh, the actual Blue Velvet material. Ooh, 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 daddy. Like, oh God, damn it. And then it's just skid crawling, like so inspired. God damn it, Hopper. And then the other one. is like, and it never left me, was that scene where oh, I forget where the guy's lip syncing to in dreams.
Yeah, Dean Stockwell.
He gets a moment there where you can see it on his face.
He's like
He's gonna
about to
get
cry.
emotional. He's about to cry, and then he flips a switch in his head, and he gets fucking mean on because the only thing that Frank Booth wants to feel is anger and rage, and if he's not feeling that, it's a weakness to him, and he will make himself not feel anything else.
I love
So,
everything about the performance in that scene where it's just like you
isn't it
see it.
amazing?
He's like
And when
struggling and
he's
then he just shuts it. All right, we're taking our neighbor on a joyride.
He's just like staring at like the singer in the face, just like just leaning in. And I think yeah, no, I think you're both right because it's like Bobby Peru is like he's a wolf, and Frank Booth is a Wolverine. One is like,
oh
just
yeah.
completely sure, sure of himself, and his cockiness and arrogance would probably trip him up, whereas the other one knows no fear and is relentless.
Yeah, force of nature.
He just wants to cause terror.
Well, Bobby Peru does too, but he wants to intimidate women or like he's a snake in the grass. You know what I mean? Like you just get
Yeah.
that vibe. He's a great villain.
By comparison, he feels more like a bully than like a
Yeah.
sinister, character to me. Whereas Booth, like, oh man, he just wants to cause terror. I mean, that's the whole point of like, I'm gonna take him with me. He's gonna be in the car with us. That's the reason for the questions. Like, it's oh Jesus. Like when he's like when he screams the first thing to move, the fuck, you're like, I feel like everything in the room, everyone, like, oh, fucking bee. If there was a fly, it'd stop moving because they were like, oh shit, this guy's gonna fucking do it. Like he's terrifying.
I gotta say, I've also thought this about Mulholland Drive. I think the cowboy is pretty fucking scary because
Yes.
what the cowboy is David Lynch taking Frank Booth and going, what if he wasn't bombastic? What if there was a like a reserve there? But like
Yeah.
what does that reserve hide?
Yeah.
Like he is so soft spoken, but like he's pretty fucking scary when you think about it.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just a
I don't
little,
disagree with that.
William Randolph Hearst, though.
Hmm,
Good call.
yeah,
But
yeah.
film, I haven't revisited Wild at Heart. I really want to see that. If I had a chance, oh man, of all his films to see on a big screen, oh, maybe Wild at Heart. Uh, yeah, yeah. I think it's a tie somewhere between that and or Blue Velvet. Even though I saw Blue Velvet at Cinespia at the mausoleum there, like it would probably be somewhere between those two, quite honestly.
Yeah, Wild at Heart, I had a chance. I actually was at a screening. So I went to the Twin Peaks Fest in Snoqualmie and Fall City, Seattle area in 2000. And I went again in 2017 with some friends. And
Mhm.
in 2017, so in 2000, they actually played the pilot, the Twin Peaks pilot, on the big screen at a museum. And in 2017, it was in Fall City. They did a um I forget the name of the theater, local theater. They did Wild at Heart. They had John Neff perform first, and I forget something else. But we ended up leaving because the seats were uncomfortable, and I don't know. There was extenuating circumstances, and it was me and my two friends, and we opted out, and I regret it because although we ended up having a really good time just hanging out locally, and I just love that town. Um, that was my chance, so far to see Wild at Heart on the big screen. I was aware of it when it came out because I was watching Twin Peaks, but I was young, and also I was like not understanding exactly. Because the thing with the original Twin Peaks is like by the second seat he's gone. He leaves so that he can do Wild at Heart. So I was like, why are you doing this movie when I love this thing? And I didn't quite understand that. So like it wasn't until later because also information wasn't as readily available, so there was a lot of confusion. But I didn't see it then. I think I've seen. I would love to see Eraserhead on a big screen. I have not. I think that would be
Yeah,
my pick. I think that would
yeah.
be my pick. Just to, I can't even imagine what that would be like on a big screen.
I've never seen that on a big screen. I've only seen it on VHS.
Oh
Like
wow,
I haven't even seen it on DVD, so it's like so I can't even imagine what it would be like to see it on the big screen.
yeah, it
I,
would really be something.
I have a story for you.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yes, I have seen it on the big screen.
Nice.
Um,
Oh, I know this story.
so that retrospective that happened, I did get to go to a double feature. It was the most bizarre double feature, and I didn't have a whole lot of friends at the time that were like living locally. Like a lot of my friends had gone away to college, and I had a buddy who was down to go with me, and it was at that retrospective they showed Eraserhead after Dune, and
No.
so many people went to go see Dune in that audience. I could sense it. I was there for Eraserhead. I'd seen Dune many times, but I was there to see Eraserhead. I had read about it. I had seen like little snippets of pictures. Like this is very early in the internet when there was barely any video on there, and YouTube was still something fledgling. And I was like, I can't wait to see this. I knew what it was about. I was like, I can't wait to see these visuals. I have been waiting for this. So Dune plays, and the crowd there is kind of enjoying it for its weird kitschiness and like some of the oddness of dialogue and like funny moments that are accidentally there in the film. Um, and then it ends, and there's a little like little intermission, and then they start Eraserhead, and we go from Dune, where people were laughing in the theater and stuff like that. So Eraserhead begins, and it's just that industrial sound. It's right away just those striking images, and that was so quiet in that theater. I was just like, and I could feel the mood shift. Like I started looking around and people, because I was jazzed, I was excited to see this fucking movie. I was like, oh my God, I was there for Racerhead. I started looking around at people and they were just like, what is this? And then it intensified and like it kept going. And then it got to that scene where Henry meets the parents.
Hmm.
And the father walks in the room and he's like, my knees, my knees. And I laughed, and a couple other people in that crowd laughed at the like dark humor of that moment. The rest of the crowd just did not know how to handle this film. And they were so quiet and like I think a little uncomfortable throughout the screening. And then the movie ended, and people just like got up, and it was quiet even after that. And I was like, this is amazing. Like I whoever planned like we're gonna show Dune and then we're gonna show Racerhead, his most commercial film to date, and then his most artistic, somewhat unapproachable film. And I was like, this is gonna be neat. And it was such a good experience. Like
That's amazing.
it has never left me. It would be nice to see it again on a big screen, especially if it was like a bunch of like, oh man, you don't even know how quickly, John, I would be there if you said Vidiot's is screening that because I'd be fucking there. I'll get there 5 hours beforehand.
I,
There's
I
line because,
dude, I
oh
was
my
looking for
God,
it. I was
they need
totally
to
looking
show
for it.
that because
Yeah.
holy shit, just to see that in the crowd even more so that would be hype for it and be like the energy would be neat. I don't know. There was something about the energy of like people just being uncomfortable that I
Right.
propelled it for me. I was just like, oh, this is good.
Let
Oh
Let
man.
me ask you guys. So if you met somebody and they're like, I've heard of David Lynch, but I'm not familiar. Like and they asked what three things would you recommend to somebody
Oh,
to get into David Lynch? John,
Uh, okay. So I have two. Let me
two is fine too. You don't have
yeah,
to overextend.
um I'm gonna say Do Blue Velvet and then watch the straight story, to as like a palate cleanser, and then take out a coin.
Oh,
Heads, it's Lost Highway. Tails, it's Mulholland Drive.
Lynch would appreciate this, I feel like. That's excellent. All the major Lynch food groups represented.
Yeah.
Ray?
it's good. Well, that's so good. I love the fucking coin flip of
Yeah, I do
a
too.
race of a Lost Highway or fucking Mulholland Drive. Cause
Especially because in the
shit.
return, Balthazar Getty's character Red does a coin flip at one point, and then the coin like just
Exactly.
stays in the air. So I'm picturing that.
Exactly. And the great thing is that, yeah, unlike a coin toss with Anton Chigurh, there's no losers in this situation.
Yes, well said.
Oh man.
Think, Ray, think. I'm going to give you mine. I'm going
I'm
to give you
thinking.
mine.
Okay, go.
So mine, I should have mentioned it could be any medium.
Mm.
So it's really hard because I'm like, I've thought a lot about this. So I have an advantage on you guys because I thought of the question earlier today. So I've been thinking about it. But I think the Elephant Man is the first thing because it's definitely like Ray said, like even at his most accessible, there's still the touches of Lynch, right? Where you get a feel for his style. So the Elephant Man is undeniable. Like Kirsten, I hadn't seen it in years. Kirsten and I watched the Blu-ray. I don't know. We were still in Redondo Beach, so let's say 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, we fucking cried, and it was like a good cry. And I mean, I was like, I didn't even remember that this movie was this fucking amazing. Like, it is
Yeah,
such a
it's really
volley of
good.
emotion. It's just unbelievable. The whole thing at the end, where it's like, I'm honored. I forget. I'm honored to have called you my friend or whatever. Like, oh my god. So it's Elephant Man first. Then, and I recognize that in 2025, some people will be like, yeah, skipping that. He has it's a biography, but it's like slightly it's kind of an autobiography. It's like another person wrote it, but they were in constant collaboration. It's called Room to Dream. I read it, I think 2 years ago. Um, I read it shortly after I moved. So it was December 2022 or January 2023, somewhere in there. And it just gives like, there's so many moments in it that will, for somebody that doesn't know his work, will help them understand who he is and what kind of what he means. I know there's a lot of, especially there's a lot of people that are younger that see his work and are like he's a misogynist. Well, like women are always getting fucked up, and I don't think that's true. And like he said about Blue Velvet, like people had said that, and he's like, yeah, but she's not every woman. Like this is a story, and she's not meant to be every woman. Dorothy Valens. And the thing, yes, I mean, women often do suffer terrible things in his work, but it's light and dark. He talks a lot about that, and like you both touched on, and it's. I feel like, and I've been called a Lynch apologist, so maybe I just think he was such a great person. You get a feel for that in this book, like just little things, like on the set of Dune, where like there was this great thing where he was talking about working with Sting, and Sting was like at one point like had gone off script, and he yelled cut, and he's like through his megaphone, he's like, does Mr. Sting need to report to the principal's office? Like he was funny, and he was good natured, and I feel like he just ultimately understood there is a darkness, but we're trying to balance that with light. So I think that it will give people a real understanding of who he is, and as an artist and a person. And then while they're reading that, listen to Blue Bob, which is technically his first record, right? It's him and John Neff, and it's before he really embraced singing, before Lynch embraced singing. I'm pretty sure he sings one song on it, but he's not credited, or at least on my CD that I bought the day it came out in 2002, he's not credited, but you could tell it's him. But Neff does most of the singing, and It's some of it's kind of straight blues, some of it's kind of got a metal edge, and some of it's just weird as fuck. But it's all I don't know. It kind of takes you through this like I can identify with this. I don't know what this is, but I feel like he's taking me somewhere, and I'm glad that he's leading me by the hand. And I think with those three things, it would prepare people to kind of go in. Then I would say like Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, probably next because they're iconic and you can't really go wrong. But yeah, I don't know. Ray, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was considering my answer. Okay. I'm gonna answer this way, and I know it's a little bit of a cheat, but I would suggest depending on the person.
Okay, that's
Um,
fair.
so someone said, "Oh," I would ask them like, "Well, what do you like?" If they were like, "Oh, I want to try Lynch," and like, I'd be like, "Well, what do you like? Like, what kind of things do you like?" And if they were like, "I like horror movies a lot," I'd be like, start at Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive, either one of those.
Fair.
Um, After that, go back and look at Blue Velvet, look at Wild at Heart, and end on or not end, but like, and then like for the third one, I'd say go right to Eraserhead. Because it's a deeper nightmare than the other
Yeah.
two are. The other two, first two are. If someone was like, "Well, I like TV series or I watch a lot of TV," I'd go, "Well, then start at Twin Peaks. Start at
Yeah.
Twin Peaks, go into then watch Fire Walk with Me, then and then go into The Return. And if you're still in after The Return, then get into the films and then like just keep going. Like because or maybe after Twin Peaks, maybe try Blue Velvet and like uh I feel like I don't want it to make it a challenge. I want to try and increase their appreciation of it
Yeah,
as it
right,
keeps
right.
going.
That's the goal.
Um and to make them a Lynch fan by like angling it into what they're used to. And if it's someone that's like totally like, "Oh, I don't know any Lynch," then I'd be like, "Oh boy." And if they're like really a pedestrian film viewer, then my question becomes, how much can they take? And if like if they're like if they're a little bit of a cinephile, I'd probably start with the Elephant Man, um, and then progress from there. If they're a really pedestrian film viewer, maybe Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet because they were his like the two biggest like
Yeah, the
films out of
iconic.
his oeuvre, like the iconic ones. Those are the ones that everyone has seen.
So
And so like
so
if they're just trying to bulleting like his career and they're just like, "Well, I want to see like his most popular films," and I'd be like, "Okay, well then go with Mulholland Drive, go with Blue Velvet." And if you're still in, go ahead and jump more into the other stuff.
so if I came to you and you didn't know me and I was like, yeah, I'm like I'm really into like Sugar Ray's music and the Bare Naked Ladies, and I really like You've Got Mail. Uh, so can you, recommend
You've got
So it's my it's
mail.
my it's my
Wow.
vision of hell, Sean.
well, the right answer, the answer I was hoping for is Ray, you turn around and walk away.
All at a '90s roller skating rink.
Oh my
I would, you
God.
know what? I'm still gonna try. I'm gonna be like, okay, start with a straight story. Um, if you're still in, then progress to Elephant Man. And if you're still down, then go into Twin Peaks. Um, and which sounds bizarre, but straight story is fairly, it's funny. It's ironic to me that it's called the straight story because it also feels like it's straightest, most like
Yeah.
um easily to approach easy to approach films. It's made for everybody.
I'll never forget. So I was an avid Wrapped in Plastic subscriber. So that was a magazine that was published bi-monthly for I don't know pretty much the duration of the '90s into the early 2000s. Dealt with Lynch and Twin Peaks, and that was where I got a lot of. So like when I remember getting an issue, and in it they talk about like David Lynch, his next movie is complete, The Straight Story, and Disney is going to distribute it. I just remember like me and my friend Brown, and like we were like, wait,
Disney.
reality is now a fucking Lynch movie. And there was even a quote from, I think it was Eisner, right? Was that like the big CEO of Disney for a long time?
Hmm.
Where he was
Yeah.
like, basically like, yeah, David Lynch has made a movie that's perfectly aligned. I'm paraphrasing. I haven't read this in like fucking 25, 30 years or whatever. 25, I don't know, whatever, 30, maybe 30. Uh, he's made a movie that aligns with a lot of the values that Disney is known for. So it just makes sense that we would have a relationship and distribute this movie. But I just, and it does make sense, but it is like, Ray, when you watched it, is it on Disney Plus?
It is, sir. That's how I watched it.
So I would definitely recommend, because I watched my DVD, and honestly, the DVD needs a fucking upgrade, and I'm starting to feel a little bit like
And it's
I don't know
rated
how.
G, by the way, too.
Yeah, it is, and it should be. But I don't know how nobody's put out like a Blu-ray of this. Um, I feel like it's like almost a lost work. Like a lot of people don't even know that it exists because it just kind of, I
There's
don't
no
know.
Blu-ray.
Not that I know of. Maybe I should check myself and look. But I feel like when I just watched it last, like I watched it. When did I watch? I'm trying to remember if I watched it before he died or after he died. I just watched it recently. Man, I don't know. I definitely knew that this was coming, and I didn't realize I knew it, but I did know it. Um, that Christabel David Lynch Cellophane Memories album that came out last year. At some point, I had it in my possession. I pre-ordered it from Sacred Bones Records the day it was announced, and I realized at some point after it was delivered, whenever that was, maybe November, I was like not opening or listening to it. And that's weird. And I think there was like some kind of unconscious anxiety because of that emphysema, announcement or whatever. And they say, oh, I'll never retire and he's still in good health or whatever. But the weather reports during COVID, I didn't watch them because I he didn't look good to me. When he grew the beard, I was like, you grew a beard because you look gaunt. And it fucking scared the shit out of me, man. I mean, it I don't know. Again, I feel very untethered in my existence now that he's gone. And that might sound absurd to somebody listening. It's like you didn't even fucking know the guy, but again, I just feel like he had such an impact. But I will say this, and Miles Fortune, I love you, man. So, John, on your episode, Miles says the conversation and community around David Lynch's work is more or less what it is for me. I'm paraphrasing that and probably butchering it badly, but I know what that means. And I feel like that's what we're doing here. And he just it inspires people to talk and to think and to just look at life in different ways and to be curious. I don't want everything to be just, oh yeah, I can follow this. I mean, no matter how good it is, I want David Lynch to be making movies, and he can't anymore, and it really fucks me up.
That's understandable. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, I think the reason that Bowie gets brought up is because it's like how you can't replace someone like that. You just have to go
Yeah,
on. And hope that it inspires, hope that it touches someone, and hope that that it makes people create art, and that they create good art and that they create meaningful art. Um, you know, I think that's like the kind of like one of the cornerstones of his career is that he's the guy who goes, well, there it is. Make of it what you will. And
yeah, and he
like
refused to fucking answer questions about it too. Like,
oh man, he not only refused to answer questions, like on that same special, I don't know if you've ever seen it, it's amazing. Um, that this guy stands up in the crowd at the museum, and he says, hey, because they take Q&A, and he goes, hey, I have an early edition of the script for Blue Velvet where at the end of it, Dorothy jumps off of a cliff and kills herself. And before the guy could finish ask his question and get it through, Lynch goes, well, if you have that, you shouldn't, because it's not good, and that's why it didn't happen. It wasn't a good idea, and I changed it. So if you have that, you should throw it away because it's trash. You can see the guy get deflated, and at the same time, he got his answer, like why he didn't do it. But it's because, like, I love the fact that, like, as much as he's like, well, make of it what you will, he's still the artist. He was still the artist who went, this is what I made, and now you have to deal with it. And like, being that person is great. Like, having someone that's like that, having someone that's brave like that, and just goes like, well, this is the art, and either you like it or you don't. Is eh, there's not a whole lot of people like that. There's a lot of
No.
people that bow down or get feel like they have to curb themselves, and like, we have these people like Lynch, like Bowie, like Jodorowsky, who go like fuck, I'm blanking on his name right now, the director of The Shining and The
Kubrick.
Killing and Kubrick, who are so brave and just go like, that's just what I made, and you either get to like it or you don't. I don't
Yeah.
really give a piss about whether you do or not.
Well, it's
Um,
pure creation. Like
and
it,
that's
it just,
amazing,
yeah, it is because
you
it's
know?
rare. But and I don't know, John, would you say, I feel like there, I'm painting this in like a pessimistic viewpoint because that's generally my polarity is pessimism, but I feel like there are a lot of filmmakers that learned this lesson from David Lynch. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is and and Ray, you mentioned Jodorowsky. I mean, that's like an influence that goes both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say now I would say this, if there's to kind of take Sean's question from earlier and like stretch it further and say like, if you like Lynch, what are three other films that you should watch to help you understand Lynch's mind more? I would say I would say the Holy Mountain would be one of them. I would say I would say Belle de Jour by Louis Buñuel, but then there's a third film, and I would and it's 14 minutes long. You can watch it on YouTube in its entirety, and it's from 1943, but you wouldn't think it because it's so avant-garde. It's called Meshes of the Afternoon, and it's
Oh,
directed
you've
by
talked about it. It's
yeah,
is it Maya Deren?
Maya Deren, and
Yeah,
he Lynch worshipped that film so much, and it's such a phenomenal film. You want to, and the sound mix, the original sound mix for it is very much like Eraserhead. So it's like, you want to get like a insight into Lynch's mind. That's the movie to watch, on
that's
YouTube,
awesome.
14 minutes long.
That's awesome. Uh, wow,
The
I'm
question
trying
is,
to
what else would I recommend that's
like
like that? Like,
three movies or I guess
okay.
medium anything media that would kind of take you further without it being Lynch, but would kind of elaborate
Okay. Um,
his pedigree.
his pedigree. Uh, I think for, I think either, I would recommend either Santa Sangre or El Topo for somebody, because they're very, oh, you used to see him. Like, it just, in the same way that like that there's a depth of storytelling that's being told that's not surface level, that is, you have to invest yourself into what the film's actually saying, and it doesn't give you easy answers. I feel like both of those are good. For the neo noir element, Under the Silver Lake. I don't know why. It maybe because it's the LA connection, but that movie is just so unusual and interesting, and it feels brave that after the success of It Follows, David Robert Mitchell goes and makes this strange neo noir that you just have to see. And
Yeah.
it has that quality of Lynch of like being unusual and like having these moments where you're like, is that actually happening or is this like a dream? Is this a nightmare or is this real? Like
Yeah.
you just have to see the movie to get it. And then I think a third recommendation would be, oh, I'm totally blanking on the name of it now. Damn it. The one we did the deep dive on for Elements of Horror, the Japanese film,
Oh, Page of
the black and
Madness.
white one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes. Page of Madness, absolutely. Page of Madness. If you're a fan of Eraserhead and go, oh, well, what else is like this? What else can I see that's like this? What else can I see that's like gonna challenge me? Page of Madness is fantastic. It's so good. It's so worth investing yourself in. Besides YouTube and besides like some other places, there's actually there's I think there's an app that I've now told you and Sean about called Dark Room that has Page of Madness on it.
Oh,
So you
nice.
can join and watch it for free. And yeah, it's worth seeking out for sure. John, I'll never get over the recommendation of that is such a good recommend.
I
Such
would
an interesting
also
film.
I would also recommend going into the TV world. I'd also recommend Hannibal with Mads
Oh yeah.
Mikkelsen, Hugh Dancy.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a
That
good
is,
one.
I think the way I've heard that show described is uh, a remix of all the Thomas Harris novels, but the DJs are David Lynch and David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
my God. What a fucking
that's
great
that's
description.
fucking wonderful. I love that. I love that.
I mean, as if like the red suited surgeons
Yes.
in season two where it was not like a clue enough to like Cronenberg. But then of course you also got like the Lynchian nightmare dreamscapes. So it's yeah, like so yeah, check out Hannibal if you like Lynch. I mean, there's other works that are inspired by Lynch, but that's definitely one of them.
I have to go with for like like the pedigree working backward, like something I feel like might have inspired him. I was really struck when I saw Avery Crounse's Eyes of Fire the first time. It has to be an influence because the like I forget what they're called in that movie, but the people, the specters or whatever, move exactly like the Dugpas or the bearded men, the woodsmen in The Return. Like it's so unbelievably close. I'm like, oh my god, has to be an influence, and it's just a really interesting film, and you could see kind of. It was probably influenced. It came out in '83. I think it was probably influenced by Lynch, and it also influenced Lynch. I've never heard him talk about it. I've never read anything that I remember with Avery Crounse, the creator of Eyes of Fire, but then kind of going like the what Lynch begat. Knives and Skin by Jennifer Reeder. Like I just think Jennifer Reeder is like maybe the closest thing that we have now to a David Lynch. Not to discount other people because there are you could definitely see other filmmakers that were very influenced, but she just feels so much like Lynch to me in her own way. And then, I mean, the fucking substance. It's one of the, there's so much David Lynch in the substance, but while again being completely Correlate Fajot's own thing.
I think Knives and Skin is a good recommend. I think that's a really strong one.
It that one in particular, but all of her stuff. I mean, even with Night's End, which is the like the less weird of her work. I was really taken with that movie when I watched it during COVID, and then with Perpetrator and Knives and Skin, I it just absolutely she blows me away. Ah, man,
Yeah.
guys,
I think the thing of like going back and looking at stuff that probably was influenced, I think it's a good call. I think check out Buñuel. Luis
yeah,
Buñuel for
definitely.
sure. Like Un Shenandoah, like Oh my God, it's a short. I had that. I had to dub Eraserhead years ago onto a videotape from like rented it at a video store, and then I used a video like two video recorders connected. It's old school to make my own copy. And I had that and Unshin Andalou on one videotape, so I could literally go from like one piece of surrealist cinema to another one, like very quickly.
That's fucking awesome. Guys, I don't know. I mean, we could talk about Lynch forever.
Yeah.
Um, it just, I just think the world is not, it suffers not having David Lynch in it, and I have nothing but love for that man who I met once. I mean, he wouldn't know who I was. I shook his hand. Actually, I believe it was at the same. I was at two speaking things with him, both in L.A. And Miles mentions the one about the transcendental. He wrote a book called Catching the Big Fish,
Mhm.
and I met him there and got an autographed copy of it, and then also the uh, Inland Empire DVD release, and I just got to shake the man's hand, and it meant a lot, even to just be in the same room as him. Um, but yeah, I don't know. So thank you guys for sharing your thoughts and feelings about David Lynch, and we carry on. That's what we do, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
Yeah.
You got it.
So this is a Horror Vision. I'm Sean.
I'm John.
And I'm Ray.
Oregon!
Hapless teenagers beset by demons in the woods. A strange new drug that turns art into murder. A can't beat a deal on a new house with a horrifying past. A video game that might usher in the apocalypse. From the demented mind of Sean C. Baker, author of a collection of desires, Shadow Play, and Murder Virus, comes Volume 4, collecting Baker's no sleep work along with several never-before published short stories. This 99-cent volume also includes the opening chapter of the author's forthcoming teenage giallo novel, Black Gloves and Broken Hearts, due out later this year.